Open your phone right now, scroll through social media for 5 minutes, and tell me what you see. You will inevitably stumble across a 20-something self-proclaimed entrepreneur trying to sell you a course on how to build a seven-figure empire by next Tuesday. They're standing in front of a mansion they don't own, pitching you crypto hacks, dropshipping secrets, or overnight Forex strategies. It looks so easy. It looks so fast. But then you look at your own bank account. You look at your bills, and you ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? Why does everyone else seem to be getting rich while I'm just trying to survive? Well, I have some incredible news for you today. You aren't doing anything wrong. You are just being lied to. Here is a statistic that sounds like an absolute typo, but it is entirely real. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the average net worth of an American household has officially crossed the seven-figure mark. It sits at $1.06 million. Let that sink in for a moment. The average American household is a millionaire. If you are watching this video, there is a very high probability that you do not feel like a millionaire. In fact, you might be laughing at your screen right now. And you should be, because that specific number is one of the most wildly misleading statistics in modern economics. Why? Because of how averages work. Imagine 9 regular people sitting in a coffee shop, and suddenly, Elon Musk walks in. The average net worth of everyone in that coffee shop just skyrocketed to over $20 billion. But nobody in that room actually got richer. That is exactly what is happening in the United States right now. A tiny handful of extremely wealthy households at the very top are dramatically skewing the average upward. The top 10% of households currently hold roughly 67% of all wealth. That leaves the remaining 90% of the entire country to fight over the scraps. If you want to know the real reality, you have to look at the median net worth. The median is the true middle of the pack, the exact point where half of the country falls above and half falls below. That number is $192,700. It is a massive, sobering gap from the $1 million average. So, when internet gurus tell you that becoming a millionaire is simple, that anyone can do it by simply changing their mindset or buying their $997 course, they are selling you an illusion. But here is where this story gets genuinely fascinating. If you ignore the social media noise, ignore the people trying to move product, and instead dig deep into actual, hard data, a beautiful reality emerges. When you look at the Federal Reserve data and the largest study of millionaires ever conducted in the United States, clear, undeniable patterns appear. We are not talking about overnight success stories. We are not talking about lottery winners. We are not talking about trust fund babies. We are talking about real, everyday people who built seven-figure net worths over decades through highly specific, identifiable, and replicable behaviors. Today, we are throwing away the motivation and the speculation. We are going to examine the exact, data-backed habits that create real wealth. No fluff, just numbers. Before we break down the habits, we need to completely redefine the word millionaire. This word has been thrown around so loosely on the internet that it has lost all meaning. When the Federal Reserve conducts its massive financial survey every 3 years, they look at something called household net worth. What is that? It is ruthlessly simple. It is the total value of everything you own minus the total amount of everything you owe. It includes the equity in your home. It includes your retirement accounts, your 401k, your IRAs. It includes your cash savings, your vehicles, and any business equity you might have. But then, you have to subtract your mortgage. You have to subtract your student loans. You have to subtract that massive car loan and every single dollar of credit card debt you carry. When the dust settles, what is left over is your net worth. And as of 2022, approximately 18% of all American households qualified as millionaires under this strict definition. That is roughly 23.7 million households. And despite economic turbulence, that number keeps growing. By 2024, UBS data showed the U.S. added nearly 380,000 new millionaires in a single year, bringing the total to nearly 23.8 million. But here is a crucial piece of context that you must understand. A massive portion of this wealth is not cash sitting in a checking account. It is tied up in home equity and retirement accounts. You cannot easily spend your 401k without massive penalties until you are nearly 60 years old. You cannot spend your home equity without either selling the roof over your head or taking on new debt. Real millionaires are largely illiquid. They aren't walking around with $1 million in a briefcase. They are walking around with $1 million on a spreadsheet. So, how exactly did 23 million regular households build this massive foundation of wealth? Let's flip the script and look at the first major habit, which completely destroys the social media narrative. If I asked you to picture a millionaire, you probably imagine a hotshot tech CEO, a massive Wall Street banker, or a celebrity. You picture extraordinary, eye-watering incomes. The data says otherwise. According to the Ramsey Solutions National Study of Millionaires, which surveyed over 10,000 real-life millionaires, only 31% of them averaged $100,000 or more per year over the course of their careers. Let me repeat that because it is the most important thing you will hear today. 1/3 of all millionaires in America never earned a six-figure salary in any single working year of their entire lives. The top 5 professions for millionaires weren't bankers and tech founders. They were engineers, accountants, managers, attorneys, and teachers. Yes, teachers. Only 15% of millionaires ever held a senior leadership position like an executive or a CEO. Furthermore, they didn't inherit it. 79% of millionaires received absolutely zero inheritance. Nothing. Only 3% received an inheritance of $1 million or more. 8 out of 10 millionaires built their wealth from the ground up, starting exactly where you are right now. Hey, real quick, if you are tired of fake financial gurus flexing rented supercars, and you want more honest, data-backed videos about how money actually works, hit that subscribe button right now. It helps the channel immensely and ensures you never miss the truth about building real wealth. Let's get back to the data. So if they don't have massive incomes and they didn't inherit the money from a rich uncle, what is their secret? Habit number 1. They let time do the heavy lifting. This is the most underrated and universally ignored factor in all of personal finance. According to Federal Reserve data, the average age of a millionaire household head is not 35. It is not 45. It is 61 years old. 2/3 of all American millionaires are between the ages of 60 and 79. Less than 10% of millionaires fall between the ages of 35 and 44. Millionaires under the age of 35 are a statistical anomaly. They are incredibly rare. The Ramsey study found that the average millionaire worked, saved, and invested for a staggering 28 years before they ever crossed the $1 million mark. 28 years. That means they worked through the dot-com bubble bursting. They kept investing through the 2008 housing crash. They stayed the course through global pandemics and brutal recessions. They understand the mathematical magic of compound interest. Compounding works exponentially, not linearly. Most of the massive wealth accumulation happens in the final few years of your investing journey because the base of money is so large. If you have $10,000 invested and it grows by 10%, you make $1,000. It's nice, but it won't change your life. But if you have $1 million invested, that same 10% return generates $100,000 in a single year without you lifting a finger. This is exactly why your 20s and 30s feel so incredibly frustrating. You are saving, you are budgeting, you are doing everything right, but your net worth seems to be crawling at a snail's pace. The millionaires in the data simply pushed through this invisible phase. They didn't panic. They didn't pivot to risky investments. They understood that wealth building is a 30-year marathon, not a 3-year sprint. But time only works if you actually have money to compound. This brings us to habit number 2. Millionaires save consistently, imperfectly, but persistently. Right now, the United States has a massive savings problem. As of early 2025, the personal saving rate is hovering around 4.4%. That means the typical American household is saving just over 4 measly pennies for every dollar they earn. Sure, during the 2020 lockdowns, that number temporarily spiked to nearly 34% because people couldn't leave their houses and stimulus checks were flooding in. But that money is long gone. We have reverted right back to our historical norms of living dangerously close to the edge. Federal Reserve data from 2024 shows that nearly 30% of adults have absolutely zero emergency cushion. None. If their car breaks down, they have to put it on a credit card at 24% interest. Millionaires operate in a completely different universe. When the Ramsey study asked 10,000 millionaires to rank the factors that contributed to their wealth, do you know what ranked number 1? Financial discipline. Number 2, consistent saving. Lower wealth households usually follow a deeply flawed formula. They get their paycheck, they pay their rent, they buy their groceries, they go out to eat, they buy some clothes, and then they try to save whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month. The problem is, human nature dictates that there is never anything left over. Millionaires do the exact opposite. They treat their savings as structural and non-negotiable. The money comes right off the top of the paycheck before their lifestyle even has a chance to see it, let alone consume it. Data from the Financial Samurai analyzing wealth metrics shows that top 1% earners regularly save around 38% of their income. They don't do this perfectly every single year. When kids arrive, or a recession hits, they might dial that percentage back. But the key is that they never completely abandon the habit. They build an impenetrable wall of defense against lifestyle creep. And speaking of lifestyle creep, we need to talk about the biggest trap of all. Habit number 3. Millionaires violently control their largest expense housing. When you picture a millionaire, what kind of house do they live in? You probably imagine a sprawling mansion with a 5-car garage, luxury appliances, and a zip code that makes real estate agents salivate. But the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances reveals a shocking truth. Millionaire households consistently carry much lower housing cost-to-income ratios than non-millionaires. Even though they have the income and the credit scores to qualify for massive, luxurious mortgages, they consciously choose not to stretch themselves. As a household's net worth rises, their debt burdens fall dramatically. Data from the Motley Fool shows that for a typical millionaire, their primary residence accounts for roughly 32% of their total net worth. That means a massive 2/3 of their wealth is sitting outside of their home, in liquid investable assets that actually pay them cash. For the average non-millionaire household, this ratio is completely flipped upside down. The vast majority of their net worth is trapped in the drywall of their house. They are house rich and cash poor. Housing is the single largest expense in the human budget, consuming about 33% of the average American spending. When you let your housing costs creep up to 40% or 50% of your income, which millions of people do to live in a trendy neighborhood, you financially paralyze yourself. When your mortgage eats half your paycheck, retirement contributions stop, emergency funds evaporate, and investing becomes a fantasy. Millionaires play a different game. They buy a modest house and they stay put. They do not engage in serial upgrading, selling and buying a bigger house every 5 years to impress people they don't even like. Many of the millionaires in the data achieved their 7-figure net worth long before they ever bought their dream home. They maintained enormous financial margin. By keeping their housing costs strictly under control, they freed up massive amounts of cash flow to do the actual wealth building. So, what exactly are they doing with all that extra cash flow? Habit number 4. They actually invest the money. This sounds obvious, but the data is terrifying. According to the Federal Reserve, between 2019 and 2022, direct stock ownership in America jumped from 15% to 21%. That 6% jump was the largest single increase ever recorded since the Fed started tracking it in 1989. People celebrate that number, but let's look at the dark side of that statistic. It means roughly 79% of American households still own zero direct stock. Nothing. Even when you factor in 401ks and IRAs, nearly half of the entire country has absolutely zero exposure to the stock market. Contrast that with the millionaire data. 8 out of 10 millionaires invest in their company's 401k plan. 75% of them also invest heavily outside of their company plans, using brokerage accounts. Why is this so critical? Because holding cash is a guaranteed mathematical loss. Let's look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. If you had $100 sitting in cash in the year 2000, you would need roughly $195 today just to have the exact same purchasing power. If you kept your money safe in a checking account for the last 25 years, you silently lost half of your wealth to inflation. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 has historically delivered average annualized returns of around 10% over the last 3 decades. Yes, there are brutal years where the market crashes. But the millionaires in the data do not panic. They don't try to time the market. They don't day trade penny stocks or try to predict the next big cryptocurrency. When surveyed, single stock picking didn't even make the top 3 factors for how millionaires built their wealth. They attribute their success to simple, relentless participation. They buy low-cost index funds, they stay in the market through the crashes, and they let American business grow their money for them. The most important investment decision you will ever make is simply deciding to get out of cash and into the game. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate accelerator. Habit number 5. Millionaires use tax-advantaged accounts aggressively. If you go on Reddit or finance Twitter right now, you will find thousands of people fiercely debating the microscopic details of investing. They argue about traditional versus Roth accounts. They debate withdrawal sequencing. They argue over dividend yields and tax bracket optimization. These debates cause massive analysis paralysis for beginners. But the Federal Reserve data cuts through the noise with one simple fact. Wealthy people ruthlessly exploit the tax code. Nationally, the median retirement account balance is a modest $87,000. But when you look at high net worth individuals, the numbers explode. According to Congressional Research Service data, less than 10% of households have over $1 million in their retirement accounts. But the 9% who actually hit that threshold didn't do it by being stock market wizards. They did it by maxing out their tax advantage space every single year. Why are 401ks and IRAs so powerful? 3 reasons. First, they make saving completely automatic. The money disappears from your paycheck before you can even touch it. Second, they remove friction. You don't have to consciously decide to invest every month. The system does it for you. And third, and most importantly, they eliminate tax drag. In a normal brokerage account, every time you sell for a profit or receive a dividend, the government takes a slice. Over a 30-year career, that annual tax drag can cost you literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost compounding potential. In a 401k or an IRA, that tax drag completely vanishes. Your money grows unbothered by the IRS. Yet, according to IRS data, only about 14% of eligible workers actually maximize their 401k contributions. The rest of the population leaves this incredibly powerful, legally protected wealth-building space completely empty. Millionaires treat their tax-advantaged accounts as mandatory baseline infrastructure. They fill those buckets up first, before they do anything else. When the Federal Reserve conducts its next massive survey in 2025 and publishes the results in 2026, I can guarantee you the patterns will look exactly the same. The math of wealth building does not change just because the calendar flips. When we step back and look at the actual reality of wealth in America, it is both deeply unglamorous and highly encouraging. Millionaires are not financial geniuses. They do not have perfect timing. They don't have secret access to offshore hedge funds. The vast majority of them work completely normal jobs. They are teachers grading papers, accountants balancing books, and engineers designing bridges. They did not get a massive check from a dying relative. What truly separates the 18% of households who become millionaires from the 82% who don't is nothing but behavioral consistency over time. They save their money structurally before they buy their toys. They refuse to leave their wealth in cash, forcing it into the stock market to fight inflation. They fiercely protect their money from the IRS by using 401ks and IRAs. They refuse to let their ego dictate their housing choices, keeping their living expenses low so their investable cash flow remains high. And above all, they have the emotional fortitude to keep doing this for 20, 30, or 40 years, completely ignoring the people online who promise faster results. The fact that the average age of a millionaire is 61 should not depress you. It should liberate you. It completely removes the pressure to have it all figured out by the time you're 25. If you start at 25, you'll likely hit the $1 million mark in your 50s. If you start at 35, you'll hit it in your 60s. The curve of compound interest is identical. Only your starting point changes. The question is not whether becoming a millionaire is possible for a regular person. The data unequivocally proves that 23 million households have already done it. The only question that matters now is, are you willing to commit to the incredibly boring, profoundly unsexy habits required to get there? And are you willing to maintain those habits for decades, while everyone around you falls for the illusion of getting rich quick? The path is clear, the data is real, the choice is yours. If this video changed the way you view wealth, please hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. It tells the algorithm to push real, data-driven financial education to more people rather than just another get-rich-quick scheme. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.